In this video, we're going to introduce another type of loop in addition to the while loop that we have already discussed, which is called a for loop. To sort of implement the for loop, we're going to calculate three different types of things. So exercise 1 is calculate factorials. So remember what a factorial is. N factorial is defined to be equal to n times n minus 1 times n minus 2 all the way down to 2 times 1. So it's the product of 1 all the way up to whatever integer that you stated. Exercise 2 is going to be the sum of integers from 1 to n. So these are going to be the two topics that we're going to sort of use to introduce the concept of for loops. Alright, so for the first exercise, how are we going to calculate factorial? If you do know anything about factorials, you would know that factorials do grow extremely fast very quickly. So a data type that's a little bit larger than integers and floats is what we call long. So we're going to call long, we're going to call it f. So this is going to be reserved for our answer of the factorial. And then n, this is going to be reserved for the factorial initial value, namely the n factorial. And this is what f is going to be equal to n factorial. That's what that's going to be equal to. We're going to define f to initially be equal to 1, and I'll discuss why in just a minute. So how are we going to calculate for loops? Well, first we need to figure out, okay, what is the value of n that we need to calculate the factorial of? So enter a positive integer n to calculate the factorial of. And then the user is going to input some value of n. We're not going to do any error catching, for example, if they enter a negative number or a decimal. We'll discuss that exception later. But let's assume that the user is actually reading the directions and knows what a positive integer is. Alright, so how does for loops work? So we're going to create a for loop by the following structure. For, and then open parentheses, and then we create an integer, and let's call it integer k, and integer k is going to go from 1, and this is going to occur as long as k is less than or equal to n, and for each iteration of this loop we're going to increase k by a value of 1. That's what the k++ is going to stand for. Alright, so how is this going to work? So f is going to be equal to the f value multiplied by the value of k. Now let's sort of explain what this is going to do. So once we enter a positive integer value of n, so we get into this loop, so f is equal to f, which is initially defined to be equal to 1, times k, which is 1. So after one loop, we get that f is equal to 1. And then once we go into this loop again, the value of k is going to increase by 1, which is going to go to 2. So f is now going to be equal to f, which currently has the value of 1, times 2, and that's going to be equal to 2. And then we go into this loop again, and now the value of k increases by 1 by that k++. So now k is equal to 3. And then what do we have? So f is going to be equal to, so f is going to be equal to 3 times the value of k. So f is actually equal to 1 times 2 at this moment. And then we're going to multiply that by 3. And then we're going to go all the way up to the value of n. And you want it to be equal to n. So eventually f is going to be equal to 1 times 2 all the way down to n minus 1, and then we multiply that value by n, and this is going to continue as long as k is less than or equal to n. So once k increases by 1, then we're at n plus 1, and that's not less than or equal to n, so this loop is going to end. So therefore this is going to calculate our factorial for us. right? So let's just test it out with a couple of values. So therefore, the value of n factorial is equal to, and then we can display the value of f. And then press any key, then enter to exit. Alright, so let's test this out, just to make sure it does what we want. Alright, so please enter value of n. So 3 factorials should be equal to 6. So that does give us a value of 6. So 4 factorial is going to be equal to 24. So let's put in 4, so that gives us 24. And then 5 factorial should be equal to 120, so that works perfectly well. So that calculates the first value. So now, another way to do a new line is you can do \n. That will do a new line before whatever text is displayed here. So now we will find the sum of numbers from 1 to n. So that sum is equal to, and then some value, right? So we're going to create another value. So another data type that also reserves long numbers is also double. So let's define a variable called s. So this is be reserved for the sum of 1 to n. And when I say the sum of 1 to n, I mean 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus all the way out to n. And this is a sum of integers. We've already required that the integer n be a positive integer. So let's assume that this input actually is valid. So we're going to do this in a similar way. So we're going to create a for loop, and we're going to initialize s to be equal to 0. So we're also going to do, so for integer k is equal to 0, as long as k is less than or equal to n, on each iteration we're going to increase the value of k by 1. So s is going to be equal to s plus k. Actually, we can increase the value of k by 1. So on the first iteration, s is initialized to be equal to 0. So, didn't I define s? Oh, this should be capital S. So s is going to be equal to 0 plus 1, and that's going to give us a value of 1. On the next iteration, k is going to be equal to 2. So s is going to be equal to 1 plus 2. Then the value of k is going to increase. So this is going to be s is equal to the old value of s, and then the new value of k, all the way out to s is going to be equal to 1 plus 2 plus all the way out to n minus 1. And then we're going to add to n, and that's going to be the sum from 1 to n. So this is going to give us the value of the sum. So we can output s. And then we can press any key and enter to exit. So let's just make sure that works. So enter a positive value of n. So let's do 10. So 10 factorial is really big, and the sum is equal to 55. And if we do the sum from 1 to 100, that's a common number. That's also equal to 50/50. So clearly that gives us the answer. Now notice the value of 100 factorial is equal to 0. It's extremely big, so it probably doesn't know how to deal with extremely big numbers. Some computers will not be able to handle that. But that's just an issue that we have to take care of at a later date. But this is some basic implementations and applications of for loops.